Good evening, a couple of minutes and we will be able to start. Thank you. So, good afternoon. Thank you to all of you for being here for the 11th edition of the Urbino Press Award, and welcome to the Italian Embassy here in Washington, D.C. As you know, as many of you know, the Urbino Press Award has two segments. The first one is this one here in Washington, D.C., where the ambassador of Italy announces officially the winner of the present year. And then after a while, a couple of months, in Urbino, in the Ducal Palace, we have the ceremony with the winner who's called to give a lecture. And we're very happy to be here after 11 years. And we have to say really strongly thank you to the Embassy of Italy that supports us so much, to the Marche region, our area. For the very first time, we have the president of the Marche region here with us in Washington, D.C. The municipality of Urbino, we have the mayor of Urbino, Maurizio Gambini, here in the first row. And then all the sponsors, Pietro and Giacomo Guidi, fashion designers who are the main sponsors. And then we have also some friends, the Casula family this year that is supporting us. They produce extremely good and special cheese that you will be able to taste later, and is one of the typical products of our area, and we are very proud of it. The process that every year guides us to choose the winner is always very complicated. We monitor the press, the US press, almost all year long, and we consider many things, but at the base of everything there is quality, outstanding jobs of the journalists that we finally pick as a winner. And we are extremely proud of all our winners. Many are super celebrities, other ones are people that are already famous, they do an astonishing job, and we think that in the future will be super celebrities too. But before I go on with the ceremony, I would like to show you a video so that immediately we can understand what the Urbino Press Award is.
Thank you so much to this beautiful, beautiful city of Urbino for this spectacular award. I can't tell you how happy I am to be standing before you today in this amazing setting of the Palazzo Ducale. My sister Marlene and I have spent the past 3 days getting to know this wonderful place, walking in the footsteps of the Duke of Montepalcio, of Raphael, of Baldassare Castiglione, one of the most famous chroniclers of the human condition. It's been educational, it's been awe-inspiring, and most of all, it's been so much fun.
Urbino and the Marche region are not only rich in art and history, but excel in the quality of life. Here you find the authentic Italy, good food with exclusive ingredients like the Napolitan truffle, the famous wines or our hills and the Italian lifestyle.
The Urbino Press Award is a recognition of excellence in journalism awarded to American reporters. The city of Urbino, which during the Renaissance gave life to one of the most important courts of Europe, symbolically reinstates its court to hear the voice and the experience of today's reporters.
I do think you have taken this process enormously seriously. I think you look for journalists who care, who have passion. If I can say that Diane Reed, Michael Weiskopf, Martha Raddatz have one thing in common, it is that we inform ourselves, that we educate ourselves, and that we educate our viewers and listeners and readers. And that's what we try to do every day, and we take that very seriously.
That country will have the most energy security, national security, economic security, healthy environment, and global respect. I want that country to be my country.
I do believe that we're in, when I was at Harvard as an undergraduate, they spoke of the great chain of being that began in places like Urbino with people who were courageous enough to think freely and who handed on that idea in a chain whose links go from decade to decade and century to century. And those links now, I feel, bind me tight, bind all of us together, brought me here for this wonderful award. Thank you very much.
I accept this award. I'm humbled by your history, the history that I see all around me. You have every right, all of you, the people of Urbino, to be proud of this history. It is so visible, and I applaud you, especially for cherishing your own history, for taking advantage of it, for honoring it, and keeping it alive as we see in this building and throughout this beautiful city.
That's the kind of journalism, more so than honoring me, it's the kind of journalism that the Urbino Press Award is honoring today. We might not all be saving the world as we hoped, but at least we are making it a more understandable place to live in. Grazie mille per questo magnifico premio.
I believe there already is the start of a renaissance here in Urbino, because I've spent the last few days here. It has been incredible, and I've seen the people of Urbino. They are wonderful people. They love the tradition. They love the history. They love the culture. They love everything about what has happened over the years. The good, the bad, and the ugly here in Italy. But the Renaissance is beginning, and I think it will only grow.
Well, so this is the Urbino Press Award. And now I'm honored to call here at the podium the ambassador of Italy in the United States of America, Armando Varricchio.
So, welcome. I had suggested to swap and having the possibility to be in Urbino to present the award, but eventually I'll meet there. But for the time being, I'm very, very fortunate and privileged to welcome you here. We have seen these beautiful images here. Great city that really gives the idea what Italy is all about. The great region of Marche, history, tradition, a glorious past, but at the same time, and a very lively economy, a city that looks into the future, and which consider journalism particularly important. You might wonder what is the connection between such an important city that left because of the many important personalities that are related to the city. What is the relation with journalism? I think that this has to do with the fact that in that very city, there is an understanding that what is going on in the world nowadays, the ability to understand what is around us, has a direct impact on our daily life. So even for those citizens, very fortunate citizens, by the way, who have the privilege to live in that city, the world matters. And this is the reason why Urbino now, we have reached the 11th edition, decided to go on with this very important and distinguished award. We have personalities here who came from Regione Marche, the president of the region, Luca Ceriscioli, the mayor of the city, Maurizio Gambini, Mr. Bartolomeo Casula with his spouse, Maria Grazia Mattei, one of the sponsors of the event, and the president, very dynamic president of the Urbino Press Award, Giovanni Lani. I want to thank all of you for being here today and for making this prize possible. There is a connection with us. We do consider at the embassy that it is a great opportunity to promote the idea that we have of Italy, a very dynamic country looking into the future, but also to acknowledge the importance of journalism. And I do think that particularly nowadays it is important to promote, preserve and cherish good journalism. Today we have a good example of that. I know that this has been kept as a secret in the city. We wanted to make sure that nobody was aware of the name that will be awarded tonight. But having said that, I think that nobody really is more appropriate as a choice as the distinguished journalist that he award tonight. So my privilege is to unveil the name of the New York Times journalist Mark Mazzetti. Who's here tonight with this very, very nice spouse. Mark Mazzetti, or better, Mark Mazzetti, to pronounce it the Italian way, is a native Washingtonian of Italian descent, which has been covering national security from the New York Times Washington Bureau for the last 10 years. Before joining the Times, Mark covered the Pentagon and military affairs for the Los Angeles Times, and before that, he was the Pentagon correspondent for US News and World Report, covering defense and national security. Throughout his distinguished career, Mark has made several important trips to Afghanistan, the Horn of Africa, and Iraq, including a 2-month assignment in 2003, embedded with the 1st Marine Expeditionary Force and as a reporter in Baghdad. Tonight's award is just the latest recognition of Mark's long career. To name but a few, I would recall the Polk Award in 2011 with his colleague Dexter Filkins for coverage of Afghanistan and Pakistan. The Gerald Ford Prize for Distinguished Reporting on National Defense in 2008. And finally, in 2009, he shared a Pulitzer Prize with colleagues Jane Perlitz, Eric Schmidt, and Pierre Zubair Shah for reporting on the intensifying violence in Pakistan and Afghanistan and on the Washington's response. So we are truly pleased, I'm truly pleased, that he has been chosen as the winner of 2016 Urbino Press Award, a prize that he will collect in Palazzo Ducale later in the summer. Mark, my congratulations. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Varricchio, for the kind words, and for all the people involved in the Urbino Press Award, especially Giovanni Lani, Gabriele Calavera, and all the distinguished guests from Urbino here tonight. And buonasera a tutti. I am truly grateful for this honor, especially given the people who have received this award in past years. Many of those people who are both current and past colleagues of mine, as well as some very good friends. From Diane Rehm and Martha Raddatz, Michael Weiskopf, Sebastian Rotella, Helene Cooper, Tom Friedman, Gwen Eiffel. The award has recognized people that I consider to be terrific journalists and whose work I've long admired. So it's with a great deal of humility that I get to be put on a list with these true professionals. Those who have won the award in the past have said the best part of the Urbino Press Award is, of course, the trip to Urbino. And so the award has acquired a reputation for being both the world's best looking and best tasting journalism prize. But I think it's different for other and more important reasons. Journalists like giving each other awards, not because we're always deserving of them. Certainly we often aren't, but because I think we generally respect what we do and like to recognize the good work of other reporters. And in the world of investigative journalism, there's a sense of shared purpose, working on stories that seek to uncover things that others, usually governments, don't want us to report. This has led to a period of particular, and I would argue even unprecedented tension in this country. Crackdown on leaks, the intimidation of sources, the investigation into sources, sources on particularly sensitive stories of national security. In short, the work of investigative journalism is under siege from many different directions. And in this often bitter climate, the Urbino Press Award is wonderfully unique and seems particularly enlightened. It is an award given not by another press organization, but by a city, a government that rewards the work of journalists covering a broad spectrum of topics, from politics to finance to foreign affairs to national security. Urbino is a city that is truly proud of its rich heritage, but seems to view this heritage not in terms of past glory, but as something that is living and is current. The city's produced poets and philosophers. It is therefore such a wonderful compliment to journalism that Urbino has chosen to honor journalists to try to carry on the legacy, this legacy of open-mindedness. It is a wonderful tradition, and it's truly an honor to be just a very, very small part of it. Thank you very much, and I can't wait to visit the city.
So usually we had a better chance. Is it working? Yes, now it's working. We had a better chance to discover the work of our winners in Urbino. And this year we introduced this new part of the ceremony because we want to share with you, with the people that come here in Washington, D.C., to share more information about our winners' job and how they go about it in their daily life. So, Mark, I remember 2013, your book On the Shade of War that brought attention to one aspect of the war of these last few years. Not so typical in comparison to the past, the wars that the United States of America and other countries are fighting, because many things are not done under the light. Can you tell us something more about it? And what were the consequences of your book after 2013?
I think in my book and in a lot of my reporting, what I've tried to do is focus on the war that nobody sees, but is as important to the history of the past 15 years as anything that happened in Iraq or Afghanistan. That the war in Pakistan and Yemen and Africa that I think has been changed the way the United States, at least as a country, goes to war. And it's particularly important because most of it's done covertly. And so I think it's been the job of journalists and others to try to tell the history of this war, this shadow war, and that continues today. So what I tried to do in my book was tell it as much of the history that can be told at this point, of this history, of the consequences of this kind of campaign, and pluses and minuses. And so the book came out in 2013, and it was interesting. About 2 months after that, President Obama gave a speech about the sort of need to be more transparent. And I'm not saying he did it because of my book, it just happened to be fortuitous timing. He talked about how we needed to be more transparent about how we go to war. If we have the CIA go to war, if you have the Pentagon doing it covertly with special operations, that we can't be doing this all in secret. And there were a lot of pledges of transparency that happened in that speech in May of 2013. And I think on balance, we've seen some of it, but the track record, I guess the grade would not be a good one on this transparency in the last 3 years. I think there's still a instinctive government the need to keep secrets, that we can't know what is happening. And as I said in my talk, the tension between the press that wants to reveal things, I think, for valid national security and public interest reasons, and the government fighting back. So I think that, you know, we will see the end of this administration where there's still a lot to be done. And if this is really the way we're going to be doing war into the future, it needs to be something that's done much more with, I think, public knowledge of what's happening.
Talking about war again, things that don't appear under the sunlight, like relationship between United States of America and Saudi Arabia, and the war in Syria. How is the entire situation going on? What the kind of relationship that this country is building up with Saudi Arabia, according to your opinion?
It's a topic of something that I've been working on a lot this year, and even today I had to do a story about it. It's a tense relationship. It's one that I think we've identified as something that's increasingly important to examine, how the United States deals with not just Saudi Arabia, but other Gulf countries, how the Gulf countries are carrying out wars of their own. In many ways, they're sort of a stand-in for the Sunni Shia war against Iran, so they're happening in Syria and Yemen. And this is, I think, kind of a way of the future. And what the United States is doing in Syria covertly with the CIA and Saudi Arabia and some other countries is arming rebels. And again, it's back to this idea of doing it secretly and for various reasons. And it's hard to assess what are the consequences? Is it going well? Is it not? Certainly, I don't think anyone who is watching the war in Syria and has watched it for so many years, and I know there's several people in this room who have, can say it's anything but a complete tragic disaster. And so, and it will be debated for a long time how much the United States should or should not have been involved. But to the extent that we are involved, I think it's important for us to continue to cover.
One more question on my part, but I would like also from the audience, if there is anyone who wants to ask a question, I'll be happy to give it space. We all remember the night when Osama bin Laden was killed and the operation by the Navy SEALs. From the moment on, we learned about the Navy SEALs, and now everybody is more aware of what they do, but obviously all the operations are pretty secret. You wrote about it. I know that you're writing about this special group of the US Army. Are they still working? Are they working in areas that we don't know about? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's all part of the theme that so much of the way we conduct war is done either with secretive drones or secret special operations units. We decided over the last couple of years to look at SEALs, and in particular SEAL Team 6, and my wonderful editor on the story, Rebecca Corbett, is here tonight, who helped us sort of try to get to the bottom of not just some of the public successes we know, but also what this group has done over the last more than a decade. And it's it is a story that got a lot of reaction, I think, because something inherently people want to know about. And there was some tension about how much we should report and how much we shouldn't. But it's, I think, part of certainly a characteristic of this administration. Whether you're looking at drones or special operations troops, Navy SEALs, this has been these have been the tactics of choice more so even perhaps than the Bush administration, which became known for the big, large wars of occupation in Iraq and Afghanistan. The administration has tried to take, the Obama administration has tried to take a different tack and use these other methods of warfare. But I think as we all try to continue to point out, this is war however you want to characterize it. And I think that's why it's important for us to try to really dig into what's happening.
Thank you. Anybody from the audience? Oscar Bartoli, our good friend, journalist, colleague journalist from Washington, D.C.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Even if you are very young, you are very,
We have a microphone.
You are great. Even if you are very young, you are great.
Not that young.
My question is very long. Newspaper or news digital? What is the future? Particularly in your beautiful newspaper.
I think that maybe the New York Times was later than some, but to realize it. But it's certainly everyone recognizes that the future is not in newspaper. The future is in digital, and the question is how to be the New York Times, the Washington Post, the great journalistic institutions in the world, and maintain the quality while changing the way that they do business, way we do business. And so I've been fairly heartened in the last 3 or 4 years to see that the Times has gone through some big changes, and certainly the focus now for our daily life is far more on what is going to be online than tomorrow's newspaper, with the recognition that we can't just wait for things to be putting it in the paper the next day. We've managed, I think, to maintain a quality and still try to broaden our audience. It's very difficult. It's something that we kind of wrestle with every day, and it's not something I think that's going to shake out tomorrow or next year. It's going to be a process. But I actually think that if you talk to my colleagues and people who look at this industry, they would probably say they're more optimistic now than they were half a decade ago or a decade ago when there were a lot of dire predictions about the future of journalism. I think actually the future is quite good.
Two more questions. The microphone, please. Okay, we start from, so we have 3 questions right now.
Hi, Mark. John Hudson with Foreign Policy Magazine. Big fan of your work.
Thank you.
I was wondering if you could recall an instance where you were reporting on a sensitive issue, and maybe the toughest call you've ever had to make, where the government was pressing against you, saying that this is in the national security interest, that this not be disclosed, and you ultimately assessed that this was in the public interest and went ahead with it. I was wondering if you just recall a moment in your reporting where that happened.
Thanks, John. I'm a fan of your work too. So we get a lot of these discussions, not just our news organization, but yours and others, about when the government tries to push back on something we intend to report. And some of them are easier calls than others, and some do keep you up at night. Not that this is the foremost in my mind. I can think of one, though, that is fairly recent. When it was actually a year ago, we did a story about the drone program, and at this sort of critical point after they had the CIA had mistakenly killed an American hostage in Pakistan, and we made the decision to reveal the names of some senior CIA officers at the very high levels running the drone program, with the argument being that because the CIA is operating more like the military, as a military organization, the traditional rules don't really apply about undercover officers being undercover, that these people are sort of the generals of the secret war and we should name them. There was a huge pushback from the government about the security of individuals, something we do take very seriously. There was a lot of back and forth, and we ultimately decided to use certain names under the argument that these are not people who are going to go back undercover. They are people who are at CIA headquarters. And there was a certain amount of, I think, need for the transparency about the program, which, as I said before, has been a cornerstone of this administration's foreign policy. So that is one that sticks in my mind, particularly because, and the reason why it's a tough call is because you are talking about specific individuals, and you operate from a situation where you don't know everything, and we don't have 100% insight, but we make our call as we see fit.
Over here, they're bringing the microphone.
I'm pausing now because I'm thinking back to World War II. And the need for transparency, I understand in a certain realm. But, you know, when you had the great scientist Turing, the absolute requirement for secrecy and for Enigma. And then you had Operation Overlord. Tell me, if we had to be pressed to reveal so much, how would we have succeeded? And we have a very, very adaptable enemy today. And we have very few human intelligence. And I feel that I'm a compassionate human being, but I also want, you know, we also have to have an ability to be able to deal with the enemy. So we're in a rock and a hard place today. I think it's more difficult than ever. And I don't know, I don't have the answers. And I know we want what you want, but I'm not sure how to do it.
Well, it's a good question, and one that we think about a lot. And I think it's important for people to know that the way we, and I say we as an institution, the Times, but I know others deal with the same issues and think about them similarly. It's not as if we know a secret and therefore it's ripe for publication. We do a balance test about just because we know it, is it newsworthy? Is it in the public interest? Your point about World War II, I mean, there's certainly plenty of things that national security journalists in Washington know, and for various reasons feel are not, they don't need to be reported just because they are a government secret. And so we think about these things. And so we have to sort of look at standards. Is it, if the government comes to us and says, don't report that because this would be a diplomatic embarrassment, or country X, which is helping us out, would be very unhappy if we reported that. Usually we don't. We take that into consideration, but it's usually not a reason to hold a story. But if it's a case of this operation could get blown and endangers people's lives, that's something that is the sort of highest standard for us and something we take the most seriously. And if I can leave one impression, it's certainly to be that it's never anything we either take lightly or would decide within an hour, or even sometimes within a day. We wrestle with it.
One more question. I think there was one person asking. No? Okay. One more question I'll ask. Are you ready to change your last name? Because in a matter of a few weeks, maybe, when we will arrange the trip to Urbino in Italy, nobody will call you Mazzetti anymore. You will be called Mazzetti, so we have to be ready to answer when they call you Mark Mazzetti. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And now, a very big part of Italian culture is food, wine, and a beautiful lifestyle outside that all those ingredients are waiting for us. Thank you. The official picture.
Okay.
And a few interviews. And then